I was lying on my side, feeling the sting in my left eye and the throb in my shoulder. The carpet under me was warm from the blood dripping down my cheek. My breath came out in short, uneven bursts. Sirens were faint in the distance, but my hearing was muffled, like my head was under water. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the shock of what just happened. It wasn't some stranger in a dark alley. It wasn't a drunken neighbor. It was my own mother, Margaret Carson. She's 63, retired elementary school teacher, the kind of woman who used to bake cookies for my friends in high school. And a few minutes earlier, she had shoved me so hard my shoulder popped out of place and punched me across the face with enough force to knock me onto the floor. People like to think these things happen in broken families you see on the news, where everyone's in and out of jail, where drugs and screaming matches are part of the daily soundtrack. That wasn't us. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I served in the Army for 8 years, working logistics, running supply lines in some of the most chaotic situations you can imagine. I've dealt with pushy superiors, enemy checkpoints, and hurricanes tearing through supply depots. But nothing prepared me for the moment my own parent became my attacker. I tried to push myself up, my good arm straining, but my vision blurred. The metallic taste of blood coated my mouth. My apartment's front door was just a few feet away, but it felt like crossing an entire battlefield. I could hear movement outside, voices, footsteps, a muffled knock. My neighbor Tom Sanders was calling my name. He's a former Marine, lives 2 doors down, and knows the difference between a bad fall and a fight. The seconds felt stretched out, but my mind was still sharp enough to remember how it started that day. The tension had been building for weeks, but tonight, it erupted. There wasn't shouting at first. Margaret had arrived with my sister Lauren and her husband Derek, faces tight, eyes sharp. They walked in like they owned the place. No small talk, no smile. I'd seen that look before in family meetings, right before someone tried to corner me into something. It was about the mortgage. Always the mortgage. They had found a house big, pricey, with a mortgage that could sink a small business if the payments slipped. They wanted me to co-sign. I had already told them no, more than once. The Army taught me to assess risk before committing to anything, and everything about this deal screamed financial disaster. Derek's credit report read like a cautionary tale. Missed payments, defaulted loans, even a foreclosure. Lauren pretended she didn't know about it. Margaret acted like it was irrelevant. Saying no to them wasn't just a disagreement, it was treated like treason. Margaret's belief in family loyalty wasn't the warm, fuzzy kind. It was the, you do what I say because we share blood, kind. And tonight, when I repeated my refusal, the room's air went cold. Lauren crossed her arms. Derek mumbled something about family sticking together. And Margaret, she stepped forward. Her voice was low, sharp, and controlled. You've turned your back on your own family, Emily. I kept my tone calm. I'm not putting my name on a mortgage that will ruin all of us. I'm not risking my financial future for a house you can't afford. I thought she'd yell. Instead, she moved faster than I thought a 63-year-old could. One shove sent me into the side table. I barely had time to catch my balance before her fist connected with my cheek. The shock of it more than the pain froze me for a second. Then the pain hit all at once. My shoulder twisted awkwardly as I fell, and I knew instantly it was out of place. Lauren didn't run to help. She stood back, eyes wide but unmoving, like she was watching a television drama. Derek kept glancing at the door, as if weighing whether to leave or stay. I heard Tom's voice again, louder now, calling my name and telling someone to call 911. The pounding in my head matched the thud of my heartbeat. I was still on the floor, my left arm limp, trying to pull myself toward the sound of his voice. My right hand left a smeared trail of red on the carpet. Every inch forward made my shoulders scream. My breath came out in ragged bursts, and my vision narrowed until the edges were dark. Somewhere in the hallway, footsteps were moving quickly toward my door. Tom was still shouting, and another voice, deeper, authoritative, was telling him help was on the way. I reached the doorway frame, using it to haul myself up just enough to see outside. Tom's face came into focus, and right behind him was a uniform. It wasn't my imagination. The cops had arrived faster than I expected. My knees gave out, and I caught myself against the wall. My heart was hammering, my mouth dry, my mind still trying to process that my attacker wasn't a stranger, but the woman who raised me. Before I could say anything, my legs buckled. The last thing I saw was Tom's hand reaching toward me and the flash of red and blue lights spilling into the hallway. The cold air from outside hit my face, and then everything went black. The smell of antiseptic hit my nose before I opened my eyes. My right arm twitched instinctively, and a quick jolt of pain in my shoulder reminded me to stay still. A blood pressure cuff hissed somewhere near my head. My mouth was dry, my throat sore from dehydration, and from trying to yell through pain. The fluorescent lights above were harsh, but they helped me focus on the figure leaning against the wall. Ryan was there, still in his patrol uniform, arms crossed, face set in that, "I'm keeping it together" look cops get when they've seen something ugly. His eyes softened when he noticed me looking. "You're stable," he said. "Doctors want you to rest. Police reports already started." I wanted to ask a dozen questions, but my body wasn't cooperating. Instead, I closed my eyes and let the silence hang for a second. I wasn't drifting to sleep, though I was back at my mom's dining table in Aurora, months earlier, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm while she talked about family responsibility, like it was a military order. I've been through army briefings where commanding officers lay out impossible missions with straight faces. That's how my mother talked about the house. "We'll make it work. You'll just sign, and the bank will be satisfied. We keep it in the family." Aller. Lauren sat next to her, nodding like a bobblehead, while Derek pretended to be interested in his phone. I knew the numbers didn't add up, even without looking at the paperwork. Years of logistics had taught me that you don't send a convoy into hostile territory without fuel, and you don't sign a mortgage without a stable income stream. Derek had neither. "You've got army money in savings," my mother said, stirring her tea like she was just chatting about the weather. "It's not like you're struggling." I set my cup down. "It's not about whether I'm struggling. It's about whether you can afford this. And you can't." Lauren's tone sharpened. "Wow, Em. Way to be supportive." Supportive? I'd bought Lauren groceries when she blew her paycheck on handbags. I'd paid for Mom's dental surgery when her insurance wouldn't cover it. But apparently, not signing away my financial security for a doomed real estate purchase meant I was selfish. That dinner ended with tight smiles and stiff hugs, but the message was clear. Pressure was coming. And it did calls, texts, chants, visits from Mom, with a folder full of mortgage documents. At first, I kept it polite, trying to reason with her the way I'd reason with a stubborn supply sergeant. Facts, timelines, realistic projections. But reason bounced off her like rubber bullets. One Friday evening, she cornered me in the kitchen after I'd just come back from a run. She blocked the doorway, documents in hand. "I already told the realtor you're signing," she said. "No, Mom, I'm not." Her jaw tightened. "You owe this family. Don't forget who put food on your table when you were in diapers." The Army had drilled into me the value of loyalty, but loyalty wasn't the same as blind obedience. In the service, loyalty also meant protecting your team from walking into a trap. And that's exactly what this was, a financial ambush disguised as a family opportunity. The weeks that followed were a slow boil. Lauren started posting vague digs about selfish people on Facebook. Derek avoided me entirely, which was fine because I had nothing to say to him anyway. Mom kept escalating. She started calling my work line. My coworkers noticed. My boss asked if everything was okay at home, and I lied through my teeth to keep my personal mess out of the office. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I was already bracing myself for the explosion. We met at Mom's house, the smell of turkey and stuffing filling the air. Everyone else laughed and clinked glasses. I stayed on alert, scanning the room like I was back in a forward operating base. It didn't take long. Halfway through dinner, Mom brought it up again. Right there, between the green bean casserole and the mashed potatoes. "Emily," she said loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "when will you be signing the papers?" Forks paused midair. Lauren smirked. Derek avoided eye contact. I swallowed the bite I was chewing, set my fork down, and said evenly, "I'm not signing. Ever." The room went silent except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life." Maybe I would regret it, but I knew I'd regret it more if I caved. The Army didn't teach me to survive war zones so I could get taken down by bad credit and emotional manipulation. Lauren pushed her chair back, Muttering something under her breath, Derek excused himself to check on the kids, even though we all knew he was just avoiding the tension. Mom didn't speak to me for the rest of the night, but her silence felt like a loaded weapon sitting on the table, ready to go off. By the time I left, the cold night air felt better than the heat inside. My boots crunched over the driveway gravel, and I absolutely knew that the next move wasn't going to be another polite conversation. It was going to be something else entirely, and I'd better be ready for it. Lauren's text came in just after sunrise on a Tuesday. Dinner at our place tonight. Big news. No smiley faces, no exclamation points. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. By the time I pulled up to their townhouse in Aurora, the smell of garlic bread hit me from the driveway. Lauren answered the door with that fake bright smile she uses when she's about to pitch something. Derek was at the kitchen counter, scrolling on his tablet like he hadn't been unemployed for months. Mom was already there, sitting straight-backed at the table, a folder at her elbow. We got through the small talk fast, because Lauren couldn't hold it in. We found it. The house. She slid her phone across the table. Screen lit up with listing photos, big colonial in Littleton, white trim, manicured lawn. Inside shots showed a massive kitchen island, a formal dining room, and more space than the three of them could ever need. Derek chimed in. It's a steal for the size. And the neighborhood's perfect. Schools, parks, everything. I took the phone, flipped through the pictures. It was a nice house, sure. But even before looking at the price, I knew it wasn't for them. Mom leaned forward, her voice smooth. We'd all be together more. Holidays, birthdays, you wouldn't have to drive so far. And with your help, we can make it happen. There it was, with your help. Lauren explained that the bank needed a stronger co-signer to lock in the interest rate. It's just a formality, she said, like those words had ever made a bad idea safer. I set the phone down. How much? Derek shifted in his seat. $489. I almost laughed. $489,000? And you think? Mom cut me off. It's an investment in family. We'll all contribute. You have the stability, Emily. We just need the bank to see it. Stability. That's what they called my years of saving. The long deployments, the nights I spent in tents under freezing rain so my unit could run supply lines. Stability wasn't a free-for-all fund for other people's bad planning. Lauren must have seen my face, because she jumped in fast. We're not asking for money. Just your name on the paperwork. That's it. No big deal. No big deal until the payment stopped and the foreclosure notice had my name printed on it in bold. I asked, "What's the monthly payment?" Derek hesitated. Mom answered instead. "Around $2,800. But we've budgeted." Budgeted on what? Derek's non-existent paycheck? Lauren's retail job that barely covered her own bills? "I can't," I said plainly. "It's not financially smart." End quote. Mom's smile froze. "Don't be dramatic. You'll still have your own place. It's just paperwork. That paperwork ties me to the loan. If something happens, I'm responsible." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You always think the worst. You act like we're strangers off the street." I didn't bother reminding her that strangers off the street had better credit than Derek. Dinner carried on with forced conversation. I complimented the lasagna, ignored the tension, and sipped water like it was whiskey. But Mom wasn't letting go. As I put my plate in the sink, she followed me into the kitchen. "You will think about it," she said, not a question, but a command. "I already have," I replied. Her jaw tightened, and she looked at me like I'd just refused an order in front of the whole platoon. On my way out, Lauren hugged me stiffly. Derek gave me a distracted later, and Mom's eyes stayed locked on mine as she said, "Don't forget, family takes care of family." End quote. Driving home, I replayed every word. They didn't want my advice, my perspective, or my military-learned discipline. They wanted my signature. And the way they were pushing, I knew this wasn't their last attempt. The next morning, I printed out every email Derek had ever sent me about investment opportunities just to remind myself why my gut screamed no. Half of them were MLM nonsense. The other half were half-baked side hustles that never made it past the "I have an idea" stage. I wasn't going to rely on gut instinct alone this time. In the Army, I never rolled out a supply convoy without recon. This was no different, only the terrain was financial, and the enemy was bad credit. I called Karen Mitchell, a friend from my first deployment who had traded her Army JAG Corps badge for a career in civilian law. She answered on the second ring, her voice still carrying that clipped efficiency that made junior soldiers sweat. Karen, I need a full background check on someone. Debt history, credit score, the works, I said. There was a pause. Is this about family? Yeah. You know it's going to get ugly, right? I'm counting on it. By the next day, Karen had emailed me a PDF so thick it froze my laptop for a moment. I scrolled past the cover page and felt my jaw tighten. Derek's credit score was low enough to make lenders laugh. 3 credit cards maxed out, a repossessed truck, medical bills and collections, and the crown jewel, a foreclosure from 5 years ago. The man couldn't finance a lawnmower, let alone a $500,000 home. I flipped through the pages, highlighter in hand, marking every red flag until the document looked like a crime scene. Karen had even attached copies of court filings from creditors chasing Derek across 2 states. When I called her to confirm what I was seeing, she didn't sugarcoat it. If you co-sign, you'll be making his problems your problems. And trust me, they won't be small problems. That night, I spread the report across my kitchen table like a battle map. Each page was another reason to hold my ground. The numbers weren't just bad, they were catastrophic. If Derek and Lauren defaulted, I wouldn't just be covering missed payments. My own credit would tank, my VA home loan eligibility could be jeopardized, and years of careful planning would go down the drain. I took out a red pen and circled the foreclosure notice, adding a sticky note that read, non-negotiable risk. The next step was to figure out how to present this without triggering a screaming match. In military briefings, you learn to keep your tone even and your points bulletproof. So I organized the pages into sections. Credit score, delinquent accounts, legal judgments, no room for emotional arguments, just facts. Still, part of me knew facts wouldn't be enough. My mother wasn't a show-me-the-numbers type. She was a loyalty-over-logic type. While I was finishing the packet, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lauren. We're meeting with the realtor again Friday. Hope you're ready to sign. No question mark. I didn't reply. Instead, I slid the packet into a manila folder and put it in my work bag. If they wanted to corner me again, I'd be ready to counterattack on paper at least. The following afternoon, Karen called again. One more thing. He's got an open payday loan from last month. $2,000. Interest rate is highway robbery. I actually laughed. Of course he does. Karen sighed. Emily, I know you're trying to keep peace, but you're not just protecting yourself here. You're protecting them from losing a house they can't afford. She was right. Signing wouldn't be helping them, it would be enabling them. Later that night, I laid the folder on my coffee table and stared at it. This wasn't just proof. This was my shield. And if I was going to face down my mother's guilt trips and Lauren's passive-aggressive digs, I needed it ready. When I finally went to bed, the folder stayed where it was, a silent reminder that this wasn't going away on its own. If anything, the pressure was about to get worse, and I was done walking into it unarmed. The manila folder felt heavier than it was as I drove to Mom's house. I'd called ahead, told her I needed to talk in person. She answered the door in her usual cardigan, eyes narrowing slightly when she saw the folder in my hand. We sat at the dining table, the same spot where she'd pushed me to be reasonable so many times before. I slid the folder toward her. Before you say anything, I want you to see exactly why I won't co-sign. Her hand stayed still, resting on the table's edge. I already know what you're going to say. Then this won't surprise you. I opened the folder and pulled out the first page, Derek's credit score in bold. She glanced at it, expression unchanged. Scores can be fixed. Not when the debt keeps growing. I turned the page to show the list of delinquent accounts, some over 120 days past due. This isn't a rough patch. This is years of financial wreckage. Co-signing would tie me to all of it. Her lips pressed into a line, but she didn't look away. We all have rough patches. Family helps family through them. Family also protects each other from bad decisions, I said, keeping my voice steady. If I sign, I'm not helping. I'm just setting all of us up for a bigger disaster. She pushed the folder back toward me without flipping another page. I didn't raise you to turn your back on blood. You raised me to stand on my own 2 feet. That's what I'm doing. Her eyes hardened. You sound just like your father. That one landed like a jab. My father had walked out when I was 12, and Mom never missed a chance to paint him as selfish and disloyal. Now she was trying to drop me into the same category. I took a breath, forced myself to keep my tone even. I'm not refusing because I don't care. I'm refusing because I do. You're gambling with a house you can't afford. I'm not going to make it easier for you to lose everything. Lauren came in from the kitchen just then, holding a mug of coffee like she'd been listening the whole time. You're unbelievable, Emily. It's not like we're asking for a kidney, just your name. That name is tied to my credit, my savings, my future. I've worked too hard to hand it over to a bank because you two want a bigger kitchen. Lauren scoffed. You think you're better than us because you were in the army? This has nothing to do with the army. It has to do with numbers on paper that don't lie. I tapped the folder. Mom's voice cut in, sharper now. Enough. You've made your point. But when this family needs you, and you turn us away, remember this moment. I stood, sliding the papers back into the folder. I will remember it. And I hope you do too. Lauren muttered something under her breath as I walked to the door. Mom didn't follow me, but I could feel her eyes on my back like the heat from an open oven. Out in the car, I sat for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. I'd gone in with facts, proof, a calm tone, and none of it mattered. They weren't looking for logic. They were looking for submission. The folder sat on the passenger seat, pages inside perfectly still, but the tension in my chest told me this wasn't the end of it. They weren't going to drop the mortgage, and they weren't going to drop me. The first thing I noticed walking into the office Monday morning was the sound of my own name being said too loudly. I rounded the corner and saw why my mother and Lauren were standing right by the front desk, folder in Mom's hands, smiling that kind of smile people wear when they want to seem polite, but are actually making a scene. Emily, Mom called, like she'd just spotted me in an airport after years apart. We thought we'd stop by and help you get this taken care of. Half the office turned to look. My boss, Mr. Caldwell, was standing near the copy machine, eyebrows raised. I kept my voice low. What are you doing here? Lauren held up a pen. We brought the paperwork. It's already filled out. You just need to sign. This is my workplace, I said, keeping my tone flat. We're not doing this here. Mom's voice went up a notch. Why not? You've been avoiding us. We figured it's better to come to you. Caldwell started walking over, clearly trying to read the situation. I could feel my ears heating up. I'm in the middle of my workday, I said, jaw tight. You need to leave. Lauren ignored that, stepping closer. It'll take 2 minutes. You can sign it right here, and then it's done. I could see my coworkers pretending not to listen while very much listening. This wasn't just an ambush, it was a public spectacle. Mom's smile disappeared. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Why are you being so stubborn? Don't you care about your family? I took a slow breath. This is not the place. We will not have this conversation in my office. Caldwell stepped in, his tone polite but firm. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to take this discussion elsewhere. Emily is on the clock. Mom turned to him, still holding the folder. We're her family, this is important. I understand, Caldwell said, but she's working. You'll need to schedule something outside of business hours. Lauren huffed, muttered something about people making everything difficult, and pulled Mom toward the door. But Mom resisted for a moment, leaning in close to me. You think you're making a point. All you're doing is showing everyone here what kind of person you really are. When they finally left, the room felt heavier, like the air had thickened. Caldwell gave me a look. Not angry, but concerned. You okay? Yeah, I lied. I went straight to the break room, gripping the counter with both hands until my shoulders loosened. I hated how easily they could still get under my skin. 8 years in the army, and I could deal with officers screaming in my face without flinching, but 2 women with a manila folder could make my pulse spike like I was in a firefight. When I came back to my desk, an email from Caldwell was already waiting. If this is going to be an ongoing problem, let me know. We can discuss HR involvement. That was the last thing I needed my personal mess in HR's hands. I typed a quick reply assuring him it wouldn't happen again, though I knew I couldn't actually control that. Around lunchtime, Karen called. I heard they showed up at your work. I sighed. News travels fast. Emily, they're escalating. Next step is showing up at your apartment unannounced. You need to be ready for that. Now, I looked around the office, where people were trying very hard to act like they hadn't just witnessed my morning ambush. Yeah, I said. I'm getting the feeling this isn't slowing down. That night, When I got home, I double-checked the locks before even setting down my bag. The manila folder was still inside, right where I'd left it: proof, reason, my shield. But standing in my own living room, I realized it wasn't just about having evidence anymore. This was turning into a siege, and I was the one stuck defending my ground. The phone started buzzing before the sun was even up. At first, I thought it was my alarm, but the vibration kept going, again and again, until I finally rolled over and grabbed it. 9 missed calls from Mom, 5 from Lauren, and a string of texts stacked like a bad to-do list. Rate lock expires in 12 days. If you cared about us, you'd do this. Don't make me come back to your work. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The Army taught me how to run supply chains under impossible deadlines, but nothing about surviving a guilt trip countdown clock. By the time I was pouring coffee, they were calling again. I let it ring, but my voicemail lit up with Mom's voice, calm, almost sweet, telling me she didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of a little signature. Around noon, Ryan dropped by in uniform, his cruiser parked out front. He leaned on the doorframe, scanning my expression. "You've got that look," he said. "What look?" "The one you had when your convoy route got changed last minute in Kandahar." Tight jaw, scanning exits. "What's going on?" I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the texts, his brow furrowing deeper with each swipe. "Emily, this isn't just family drama, this is coercion. You know that, right?" I gave a humorless laugh. "Try explaining that to my mother. She thinks I'm just being stubborn." End of ment. She's not asking. She's demanding, and she's threatening public embarrassment to force your hand. That's harassment. And it's crossing into intimidation. I shrugged. "So, what am I supposed to do? Arrest my own mom?" Ryan's tone flattened. "If it keeps up, yeah, you might have to file something formal. Military discipline doesn't mean taking hits without defending yourself." That night I muted both of their numbers. But it didn't stop them from finding other routes in. Lauren started messaging me on Facebook, tagging me in posts about selfish people who forget where they came from. Mom left a handwritten note in my mailbox. The kind of thing that would sound caring if you didn't know the context. "We don't have much time left. Do the right thing before it's too late." The pressure wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. They were wearing me down, closing the window until I either gave in or became the villain of the family forever. 3 days before the deadline, I got home from work to find Mom sitting on the hood of her car in my parking lot, folder in her lap. She didn't move when I pulled in. "You've had enough time to think," she said as I got out. "I'm done asking." I kept my voice level. "Then we're done here." Her jaw clenched. "If you walk away now, don't bother calling me again. You won't have a mother after this." I met her eyes. "If the price of keeping you is losing myself, then I guess I won't." End of Lynn. She stood there, hands tightening around the folder, but didn't say another word. When I walked past her to get inside, I could feel her glare like heat on my back. That night, as I checked the locks again, I realized this wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about control, about breaking me down until my signature was theirs. And the closer the clock ticked toward 0, the more I could feel them gearing up for a final push. The knock at my door was so hard it rattled the frame. I'd just set down my coffee mug when it came again, louder. Before I could reach the door, it swung open, Mom, Lauren, and Derek filing in like they owned the place. "What the hell?" I started, but Mom cut me off. "We're not leaving until you sign," she said, her voice low and sharp. Lauren stood with her arms crossed, Derek hanging back near the doorway like he wanted an escape route. The folder was in Mom's hand, papers already sticking out the top. I took a step back, putting the couch between us. "You can't just barge in here." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "You've left us no choice. The rate lock ends tomorrow." "That's your problem, not mine." Mom's hand twitched around the folder. "I'm done asking nicely." I straightened my shoulders, feeling the old Army training kick in. "And I'm done answering. This conversation is over." Something in her face shifted, her jaw tight, eyes hard. She stepped around the couch fast, faster than I could move back. The folder hit the coffee table, and before I could react, her palm slammed into my shoulder. Pain shot down my arm as I stumbled. "Stop!" I yelled, but she was already on me. Her fist connected with my cheekbone so hard the room tilted. My left leg buckled, and I went down sideways, my arm twisting awkwardly underneath me. A sick pop told me my shoulder was out. Lauren didn't move to help. She just stared, eyes wide, like she was watching a reality show. Derek mumbled something about this going too far, but he didn't step forward. I tried to push myself up with my good arm, but my vision blurred, and hot blood ran from my eyebrow into my eye. Mom was still standing over me, chest rising and falling like she'd just finished sprinting. "You will not ruin this family," she hissed. I heard the door open, Tom Sanders' voice cutting in. "What the hell is going on in here?" Mom froze, but only for a second. She grabbed the folder, turned on her heel, and stalked toward the door. Lauren followed, shooting me one last glare. Derek lingered half a beat before trailing after them. Tom stepped inside, scanning me head to toe. "Sit still, Emily. You're bleeding." I shook my head, trying to clear it. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're pale as a ghost, and your shoulder looks wrong." He was already pulling his phone out. "I'm calling 900 and ELDS. I wanted to tell him not to, but the words wouldn't come out right. My tongue felt thick, my ears ringing. The edges of my vision went dark. Tom's voice was still somewhere above me, firm and clipped now. "Yeah, it's a physical assault. She's injured. We need EMTs and police. Yes, police. The suspect's her mother." That last part made something in my stomach twist. Even hearing it said out loud didn't make it feel real. I tried to drag myself toward the door, but every inch made my shoulders scream and my head pound. My knees felt like they'd been replaced with wet sandbags. Tom crouched down beside me, steadying my good arm. "Stay put, they're almost here." The hallway outside was alive with voices, neighbors peeking out of their doors, murmuring. My head felt heavier with every second, my body leaning against the wall because I couldn't hold myself upright anymore. A faint echo of sirens grew louder, and red and blue light spilled across the hallway carpet. 2 officers came in fast, Ryan right behind them, his face tightening when he saw me. "Emily," he said, crouching beside me. "Don't move. We've got EMS coming in now." I opened my mouth to say something, but all that came out was a choked sound. My cheek throbbed with every heartbeat, and my shoulder was locked in a burning ache. Ryan looked over at Tom. "You saw it?" "Yeah," Tom said. "Came in after it started, but saw her standing over Emily. She hit her." Ryan's jaw flexed. "All right." He stood, gave a quick signal to one of the other officers, and they headed down the hallway in the direction Mom had gone. The EMTs were suddenly there, kneeling beside me, asking questions I could barely process. The only thing keeping me anchored was the cold air coming in from the open door, sharp against my overheated skin. Someone lifted my arm carefully, bracing it before wrapping it against my torso. Another voice, female, calm, told me they were getting me on the stretcher. The last thing I remember before they wheeled me out was catching Tom's eye. He gave me a short nod, the kind you give a fellow service member after a firefight, wordless, solid, and saying more than anything else could in that moment. The stretcher jolted as the wheels cleared the threshold, and the cold hallway air hit my face hard enough to make my eyes water. A paramedic clipped a pulse ox to my finger and spoke in short, clean sentences. "Stay with me, Emily. We've got bleeding from the brow, likely facial fracture, shoulder deformity consistent with dislocation. Rates high, pressure's okay." Another wrapped my shoulder tight against my torso before securing the straps. The pressure made me groan. She adjusted and kept going. Ryan moved alongside us, keeping pace as the EMTs rolled. "I'm right here," he said, voice steady. "Don't try to talk if it hurts." Tom walked a half step behind, answering an officer's questions without looking away from me. I heard shouting, then a thud. When I came in, her mother was standing over her. Emily was on the floor, bleeding. The sister and the guy were by the door. The officer's pen scratched the pad. Names? Margaret Carson, Lauren Carson, and Derek Hall. Another officer peeled off to knock on a neighbor's door. A second started photographing the droplets on my carpet and the smear on the wall by the frame. One collected the manila folder from the table with gloves on, slid it into an evidence bag, and labeled it. The small things, gloves, labels, flashes, made it feel real in a way pain hadn't yet. As we turned toward the elevator, a uniform stepped out of the stairwell and spoke into his radio. "Suspects left 5 minutes ago, heading to the parking lot. Unit 2, check south exit." The doors opened, we rolled in. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. The EMT at my shoulder glanced at me, then at the monitor. Pain level? High, I said, voice clipped, because anything more would rattle. Copy. We'll push something en route. Ryan leaned closer so only I could hear. You didn't do anything wrong. I said no, I managed. That's not wrong. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. A couple froze by the mailboxes. The front desk guard stood up, eyes wide. We pushed into the night, and the cruiser lights washed the parking lot in red and blue. Across the way, an officer was already talking to a woman who'd seen 3 people hurry out and drive off. He took her contact info and waved another unit to sweep the street cameras. The EMTs slid the stretcher into the ambulance with one clean lift. Ryan stayed outside, talking to the primary officer, while Tom gave a more detailed account. The back doors swung shut, and the world narrowed to the hum of the engine and the paramedic's voice. Okay, Emily. I'm Molly. Partner's Dan. I'm starting an IV for pain control. You allergic to anything? Penicillin, I said. Noted. Any loss of consciousness? A little blur. No blackout until I hit the hall. Good. Try to breathe slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The needle slid in, the tape sealed it. Dan placed a rigid collar around my neck as a precaution. Molly cleaned the cut on my eyebrow with quick, efficient swipes that stung. You're doing fine. A minute later, the ambulance door opened and Ryan climbed in, taking the small bench near my feet. He had his body camera turned off and his hands folded, the way he does when he's here as my person, not as a cop. Officers are canvassing. We'll meet them at the ER, he said. Tom's statement lines up. Building has hallway cams. We'll pull footage. Mom left? My voice was dry. Yeah, he said, jaw tight. We've got probable cause. We'll get her. Molly gave me a dose through the line, warned me I might feel lightheaded, and watched the monitor. The burn in my shoulder softened at the edges. My cheeks still throbbed in rhythm with the siren. I kept my eyes on the ceiling panels, counting screws to keep my focus from slipping. Any nausea? Molly asked. Some. Bucket's here. Try not to move your head. The radio cracked with the dispatcher's update. A unit had flagged a car matching the description leaving the complex, registered to Lauren. The voice was calm, procedural. My body tensed anyway. Molly read the monitor again. Stay with me. I forced my jaw to unclench. Tom, okay? Ryan nodded. He's fine. He's giving clean testimony. He's rock solid. The rig took a corner. The sway sent a lightning bolt through my shoulder. I gripped the rail, breathed through it, and focused on the facts I could control. ID, insurance card, emergency contact. They were in my wallet, front pocket. My phone was somewhere under my coffee table, probably cracked. None of that mattered more than getting the shoulder reduced and the cut closed. Molly pressed sterile gauze along my brow. Looks like you'll need sutures. X-ray on the shoulder, maybe a reduction under sedation. Orbital bone might be bruised. We'll let imaging decide. Sounds like a party, I said, because sarcasm costs less than panic. A corner of her mouth twitched. You've got grit. Helps. The siren's pitch changed as we approached the hospital. Ryan checked his watch, then looked at me. I'm going to ride it in with you. Then step out when they start intake so there's no conflict. I'll be right outside. Officers Martinez and Chen will handle the scene and bring your statement later tonight or in the morning depending on scans. Okay. Anything you want me to grab from the apartment? Wallet, keys, I said. Folder stays with the police. Already bagged, he said. We'll document everything. The ambulance slowed, then backed into the bay. The doors opened to bright white lights and a receiving team ready to move. The stretcher slid down with a thump, and the ER doors parted. We rolled past a line of curtained rooms. A nurse clipped a new bracelet on my wrist, confirmed my name and date of birth, and asked me to rate my pain again. 8, I said. She nodded, typed, and matched eyes with Molly for a fast handoff. Ryan squeezed the footrail once, a small, silent anchor, then stepped back as the team pivoted the stretcher into a room. Molly hung the IV bag, Dan relayed vitals, and a physician's assistant introduced herself while gloving up. The room smelled like disinfectant and warm plastic. The clock on the wall ticked. I locked my gaze on it, kept my breath slow, and let the process do what it was built to do. The first shot of morphine settled in like a heavy blanket, dulling the edge of the pain without knocking me out completely. The ER team moved with that controlled speed I'd seen in military field hospitals. Everyone knew their role. No wasted motion. A nurse clipped my hair back, cleaned the cut above my eyebrow, and placed a sterile drape before the doctor came in to stitch. 7 sutures, he said to the nurse, his voice calm, like we were talking about the weather. I felt the sting of the local anesthetic, then the strange tugging as he worked. Across the room, another tech adjusted my arm in a sling before wheeling me to radiology. The shoulder x-ray confirmed a dislocation, but no fracture. They sedated me lightly for the reduction. 2 strong pulls, a clunk, and sudden relief as the joint slid back in place. By the time they wheeled me back, Ryan was waiting outside the curtain, hands in his pockets. He stepped in just long enough to check my face, then glanced at the sling. Better? Better than before. A uniformed officer stepped in behind him. Miss Carson, I need to let you know your mother's been taken into custody. The words didn't hit all at once. Taken into custody sounded too formal for the picture in my head. Mom in handcuffs, shoved into the back of a squad car. She was located at your sister's apartment, the officer continued. We informed her she's under arrest for felony assault and battery causing bodily injury. She was read her rights on scene. Ryan kept his eyes on me, like he was gauging whether I'd break. She didn't resist, he added quietly. The officer's tone stayed even. Your sister was present. She was vocal about disagreeing with the arrest. But we have physical evidence, your injuries, witness statements, and we've secured the hallway camera footage from your building. I nodded once. Okay. He handed me a small form. This explains the no-contact order that's now in effect. She's not allowed to call, text, show up at your home or workplace, or send messages through someone else. If she does, report it immediately. The paper felt light in my hand, almost flimsy compared to the weight of what it meant. After the officer left, Ryan pulled the curtain closed. They'll process her tonight. She'll probably spend the night in holding before seeing a judge in the morning. With the injuries documented and a witness, the DA's going to push this hard. I stared at the ceiling. I didn't think it would get this far. He sat in the visitor chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Emily, she made it get this far. You didn't swing at anyone. You didn't break into her home. You told her no, and she escalated. That's on her. The nurse returned with discharge papers and a packet of instructions. No lifting more than a coffee mug with that arm for at least 2 weeks. Keep the stitches dry for 48 hours. Ice on the shoulder 20 minutes at a time. We'll schedule follow-up for suture removal. She handed me a small paper bag with pain medication and antibiotics. Someone's driving you home? Ryan answered before I could. Yeah, I've got her. The walk from the ER to his cruiser felt surreal. My sling snug, stitches tugging with every step, the automatic doors opening into the night like nothing had changed outside. Once we were on the road, Ryan spoke again. Tomorrow, you'll probably get calls from extended family. Some will want details. Some will try to talk you into dropping charges. Don't engage. Hi. I know, I said, watching the streetlights streak past. When we pulled into my lot, Tom was sitting in his pickup, engine idling. He rolled the window down. Wanted to make sure you got back okay. Ryan got out first, grabbed my bag from the back seat, and helped me out. Tom gave me a nod. You did the right thing. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of antiseptic from the EMT's earlier work. The manila folder was gone, logged as evidence, but the dent in the wall by the couch was still there, silent proof of how close her fist had landed to my temple. I sat down carefully, the sling awkward against the cushions. Ryan put the meds and discharge papers on the coffee table. I'll check in tomorrow. Caldwell knows you're out for a few days. Take them. As he left, the room went quiet. My body ached, but the weight on my chest wasn't just from injury. It was from the reality that my own mother was in a cell tonight because she couldn't accept one word. No. By the time I walked into the county courthouse 2 weeks later, the swelling around my eye had faded to a faint yellow shadow, but the sling was still there. Karen met me at the front steps, holding a slim leather briefcase like it was a weapon. Judge Matthews, she said as we passed through security. Doesn't like theatrics. Keep answers short, let me do the talking. Inside, the air was cool, smelling faintly of paper and old carpet. Ryan was seated near the front, in uniform, next to Tom, who wore his best plaid shirt and a solemn expression. I gave them both a nod before taking a seat beside Karen at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, my mother sat between her public defender and Lauren. She looked smaller than I remembered, but the glare she shot me across the courtroom made it clear nothing had changed. Lauren leaned over, whispering into her ear, her eyes locking on me like I was the one on trial. The bailiff called the case. Judge Matthews glanced at the file in front of her. This is a hearing on a request for a permanent protective order following an emergency order issued on the date of arrest. Plaintiff, please proceed. Karen stood smoothly. Your Honor, my client, Miss Emily Carson, seeks a 1-year no-contact order against the defendant, her mother, Margaret Carson, due to a physical assault causing documented injury and ongoing harassment intended to coerce financial action against her will. She handed up exhibits, photographs of my injuries, the ER report, x-rays, and still frames from the hallway camera showing my mother entering and leaving my apartment. The judge studied each one. Expression neutral. Karen called Tom first. He kept his testimony straightforward. He heard shouting, entered my apartment, saw my mother standing over me while I was on the floor bleeding, and called 911. The defense attorney asked if he'd seen the first blow. Tom said no, but added, I saw enough to know she was in the middle of it. Ryan went next, confirming the scene upon arrival, the injuries, and the decision to arrest based on probable cause. When asked if my mother resisted, he simply said, no, but she was verbally hostile. Hell was 5. Then it was my turn. Karen led me through the morning's events with short, precise questions. I described the confrontation, the impact, the dislocation, the vision blur, the blood in my eye. The defense tried to imply I'd provoked it by refusing to help with the mortgage. That's not provocation, I said, keeping my voice even. That's a boundary. When I stepped down, Karen presented the last piece, Derek's credit history report, admitted to show the financial context. This wasn't a spontaneous argument, she told the judge. It was part of a sustained campaign of pressure, culminating in violence. The defense made their pitch. Family disagreements get heated. Misunderstandings happen, and a one-time incident shouldn't sever mother-daughter contact. Lauren sat stiff beside Mom, nodding along. Judge Matthews folded her hands. I've reviewed the evidence and the testimony. This was not a misunderstanding, this was an assault. The fact that it occurred in the plaintiff's home makes it more egregious. The emergency order is made permanent for a period of 12 months. Violation will result in immediate arrest. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for continued prosecution. The gavel hit once. Sharp. Lauren hissed something into Mom's ear, and they both stood quickly, moving toward the exit without looking at me. The bailiff handed me a copy of the order, 3 crisp pages spelling out the restrictions in legal language that didn't leave any room for family exceptions. Outside, Karen exhaled. That's as clean a win as we could hope for. Now the criminal case will run its course. Tom clapped me lightly on the good shoulder. You held the line. Most people fold before it gets here. Ryan walked me to my car. With the protective order in place, you've got space. Use it. End quote. I nodded, folding the order and tucking it into my bag. It felt like armor, not heavy, but enough to remind me that for once, I wasn't the one taking the hits. The county courthouse felt colder the day of sentencing, even though it was mid-spring. I walked in with Karen at my side, the same leather briefcase in her hand, and Ryan sitting near the back in plain clothes this time. Tom was there too, hat in his lap, leaning forward like he was ready for a briefing. Margaret was brought in from a side door in an orange jail jumpsuit. She glanced around the room until her eyes met mine, then looked away like I was a stranger. Lauren sat behind her, arms folded, glaring at me as if she could change the judge's mind by willpower alone. The prosecutor went first, outlining the case, the documented injuries, the witness statements, the hallway footage, and the medical reports. The defendant committed a deliberate assault on her own daughter inside the victim's home in an effort to coerce her into a financial agreement she had no obligation to enter. This was not a heat-of-the-moment disagreement. This was targeted and sustained pressure, escalating into violence. The defense tried to frame it as a family dispute gone too far and asked for probation, citing my mother's age and community ties. Judge Matthews was unmoved. This court does not excuse violence because it occurs within a family. In some ways, it makes it worse. She listed the charges: felony assault causing bodily injury, unlawful entry, and the sentence. 5 years in state prison. Lauren's head snapped toward me as if I'd personally signed the order. Mom didn't react at all. She was led out without looking back. Outside, Karen asked quietly, "You ready to go through with the civil case?" "Absolutely," I said. She and Lauren called me a liar to half the family and told people I made the whole thing up to steal attention. That's defamation, and I'm not letting it slide. The lawsuit was less dramatic than the criminal case, but just as draining. Karen filed in civil court for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We had text messages, social media posts, and statements from relatives who'd been told I'd faked my injuries. Lauren fought it harder than Mom did. Her deposition was an exercise in watching someone dodge their own words, pretending Emily is lying, was just venting and claiming she's just trying to ruin Mom's life. Was not meant literally. The judge didn't buy it. The ruling came down in my favor. A monetary award that wouldn't make me rich, but would cover my medical bills, legal costs, and then some. More importantly, it came with a court acknowledgement that what they'd done was malicious and false. When Karen slid the written judgment across her desk toward me, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. "They don't get to rewrite what happened," I said. "That's the point," she replied. "This is on the record now. They can't touch it." I left her office that day knowing both cases were closed in the eyes of the law. My shoulder still ached when it rained, and my eyebrow carried a faint scar, but the part of me that had been bracing for the next attack finally started to loosen. For the first time in months, my life felt like it belonged entirely to me. The first morning I woke up without a court date on the calendar, the silence felt strange. No calls from Karen, no reminders from Ryan about hearings, no paperwork deadlines. Just my apartment, the hum of the fridge, and the sound of coffee dripping into the pot. Physical therapy started slow bands, light weights, range of motion drills. The therapist, a former Navy medic named Chris, had the kind of dry humor that made you forget how much your muscles were burning. "You handled supply runs in the desert," he'd say. "You can handle a 2-pound dumbbell." Some days, the ache in my shoulder made me want to quit halfway through. But the Army had taught me discipline long before it taught me anything else, and quitting wasn't an option. By the 3rd month, I could lift a grocery bag without wincing. The mental recovery took longer. Even after the protective order and the lawsuits, I caught myself tensing whenever my phone buzzed. I started sleeping with my keys and wallet on the nightstand, a leftover habit from the night they came to my apartment. Ryan noticed. "You've got space now," he said one night over takeout. "You don't have to live like you're waiting for the next strike." "I know," I said, "but knowing it and feeling it are two different things." End of sec. That was when I decided to put my skills to use in a way that kept me moving forward. I rented a small space in a strip mall near downtown and started a financial readiness workshop for veterans and their families, practical training on budgeting, debt management, and saying no to bad financial deals without feeling guilty. The first class was just 4 people, 2 Army spouses, a retired Marine, and a Coast Guard vet. I told them my story, not the court details, just the part about being pressured into something risky and how saying no nearly cost me everything. One of the spouses, a young woman with 2 kids, raised her hand. "How do you not feel guilty when it's family?" "You remind yourself that love doesn't mean sacrifice without boundaries," I said. "If they love you, they won't demand you burn yourself down to keep them warm." Word spread. By the 3rd month, we had 12 regular attendees. I brought in guest speakers, lawyers, credit counselors, even Tom, who talked about bystander intervention. Around that time, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was familiar enough to make my stomach flip. I opened it at the counter, half expecting venom, but it was from Lauren. She wrote that she'd been angry, blinded by loyalty to Mom, and that she was sorry for what she'd said about me. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just said she wanted me to know she'd been wrong. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Ryan asked if I'd answer. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe not ever. Right now, my life's better without reopening that door." A year to the day after sentencing, I signed the lease on a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Not the biggest place, but it had good locks, a fenced yard, and enough room for the people I trusted to gather without feeling cramped. We broke it in with a backyard cookout, Ryan manning the grill, Tom telling old service stories, Karen sipping iced tea while pretending she wasn't still keeping mental notes on everyone's behavior. Chris from PT showed up with a case of beer, and the vets from the workshop brought dishes like it was a potluck drill. As the sun dropped behind the fence, I realized the ache in my shoulder was gone, replaced by the solid weight of something I hadn't felt in a long time, security that wasn't dependent on anyone's approval but mine. When I glanced around the yard, I didn't see a single person who would have asked me to trade my safety for their comfort. And that, I decided, was what real family looked like. The grill smoke still hung in the air when Ryan handed me a fresh plate of food and sat beside me on the patio bench. Laughter floated from the yard where Tom was teaching one of the younger vets how to throw a perfect spiral with a football. Karen was in deep conversation with Chris, probably plotting how to recruit him for her next charity event. I leaned back, taking in the sound of it all, the easy chatter, the clink of glasses, the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. For years, family gatherings had been tense affairs where every word felt like it was walking a tripwire. Tonight, there wasn't a single sharp edge. Ryan nudged my elbow. "You're quiet. That's either good or bad." "Good," I said. "Very good." When the sun dipped below the fence line, someone switched on the string lights I'd hung earlier that week. The warm glow stretched across the yard, catching the smiles of people who had earned their place here. Every face in the crowd belonged to someone who had stood by me without asking me to compromise my safety or my principles. Tom wandered over with 2 beers, setting one in front of me. "You did all right here, Carson. Solid crew. Good perimeter," he said, glancing around the fence line like he was still doing a security sweep. "Old habits," I replied with a grin. From the corner of the yard, one of my workshop students waved me over. She'd brought her sister to meet me, saying she'd finally convinced her to take the financial readiness class. "She's stubborn," the student said with a wink. "Figured you could handle that." I laughed because a year ago I'd been the one everyone thought was too stubborn for my own good. Now that same stubbornness was the thing keeping me from repeating old mistakes. As the evening went on, people drifted toward the patio, plates balanced on their laps, swapping stories that ran from military mishaps to the kind of civilian headaches that somehow felt less overwhelming when shared. At one point, I caught Ryan watching me from across the group, a faint smile on his face. Later, as we cleared plates inside, he said, "You know, you could have moved anywhere. You could have started over in a different state and never looked back." I thought about it," I admitted. "But this," I gestured toward the yard where the others were still talking, "this is starting over. Not running away." When we stepped back outside, Tom was in the middle of telling a story about a supply convoy gone sideways in Kuwait, and the group was hanging on every word. The punchline landed, laughter rolled, and I felt something loosen in my chest. I stood, holding my glass, and everyone quieted just enough to listen. "I just want to say something before the night gets away from us," I began. "A year ago, I thought family meant the people you were born into. I thought you owed them loyalty no matter the cost. Turns out, real family are the ones who protect you, not the ones who demand you give up your safety to protect them." I raised the glass slightly. "So here's to family, the kind you choose, the kind that shows up, and the kind that makes you stronger instead of smaller." That. Glasses lifted around the yard. The clink that followed wasn't loud, but it was solid, like a lock clicking into place. And in that moment, surrounded by the people who had helped me build something better, I knew exactly where I belonged. Looking back, I used to think walking away from family was the same as giving up. Now I know it's the opposite. It's choosing yourself when someone else tries to take that choice away. The army taught me how to stand my ground in hostile territory, but life taught me that sometimes the battlefield is your own living room. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I stopped fighting for people who were never fighting for me. And the life I have now? That's proof you can rebuild from nothing and end up with more than you ever lost.